Welcome to the Real ResQ podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast, your vertical podcast network. Go to verticalhelicast.com to check out not only this podcast, but you got Hangar Z, the helicopter podcast, and Vertical MRO, just to name a few. Now, this in particular episode of the Real ResQ is going to be sponsored by these guys, Switlik Survival Products. Switlik manufactures the highest quality safety and survival products in aviation, marine, and the military markets. Check them out today at switlik.com. Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. Check them out today at breeze-eastern.com. And Blue Drop Training and Simulation. They specialize in training and simulation that equip their clients with the essential tools for continuous learning and development. Check them out today at bluedrop.com. Coming up next in this episode of The Real ResQ, I am truly humbled and honored to be joined by our next guest, as he is one of the founders of the United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer Program. He comes to us and tells us stories from before the swimmer program was implemented in the Coast Guard, and then all the struggles and battles that he had personally to make it what it is today. So please welcome our next guest, the legendary United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 6, Mr. Larry Farmer. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ podcast. Today, I have an honored guest today. He is the Godfather of the United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer Program. Ladies and gentlemen, United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 6, Mr. Larry Farmer. What's up, my brother?
How you doing? How you doing, Jason? Good to be with you, man.
It's good to be with you too. I am so happy to have you on. I'm going to throw it even further out there because I've already had your son on. So I went backwards. So your son, Jimmy Farmer, United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 363, came on in episode 49 and 50. And, he talked all these stories about hanging out with you and in the shop and seeing everything. And he just knew he was going swimmer. And it was pumped. And I've been trying to pin you down ever since.
Yes. And I'm very proud of my son, Jimmy. And I'm really excited about what he did. Before we get started, I want to say how proud I am of you. And how many episodes are we up to now?
Oh my gosh, it's a lot. As a matter of fact, I think you're going to be 186 will be the count, like this one. Actually, hold on, let me double check that. Yep. So we officially, this podcast right here is episode 186. So I think it's doing all right.
So congratulations. It's really great. Sir. I have listened. I haven't listened to all of them, but I've listened to a number of them, and I'm really impressed by your ability to get everybody to open up and tell you what they know and ask all the right questions. And they're fantastic episodes. So thank you for doing this.
Wow. Thank you. The little tear. Just I want you to know that coming from you. I appreciate that. It's my pleasure. I love doing this. I love hearing the stories. I've gotten off the phone with guys and they're like, dude, that was like therapy. I'm like, oh, glad I could help.
Sure.
I just love the stories. So why not? But yeah, I appreciate it. Well, Larry, let's start with you because this episode is all about you. Now, there is a reason that I called you the Godfather of the United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer Program. And that is because At the time, you were a Master Chief, E9. For those that don't know the United States Coast Guard and or the military in the U.S., E9 is like you can't go any higher unless you either go the Master Chief and running the entire Coast Guard, which is an E10, or you go officer. That's the only way to go up. You're like at the top. And you went through rescue service school at that rank. Oh, this is going to be so fun to talk about. I can't wait. I can't wait. But before we get into that, let's get a little background about Mr. Larry Farmer. How and why did you join the Coast Guard, and what brought you to ASM?
Well, I'm gonna take a lot of you further back than a lot of your listeners were even before they were even born, and also ancient history that a lot of them are either not aware about or can't even remember. Anyway, I joined the Coast Guard when I was 18 years old, and right out of high school, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. My family life was wonderful, but being the brilliant, completely mature 18-year-old that I was, I wanted to get out of town and I wanted to see the world. This was also at the height of the Vietnam War. I had no political problems, or I was not a hippie. So I had no political problems.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. I'm positive. I didn't have much more hair then than I got now. Anyway, so the only problem I had was I knew because my draft number was up. Being out of high school and not in college, I was in my neighborhood. I had my draft number was getting close, so I had to make a decision. Like I say, I had no problem with the Vietnam War, but I didn't want to go over there and lay in a rice paddy. So I was picking and choosing, and my first option was to try to get in the Air Force. So I went and took all the tests for the Air Force, passed all the tests, went to the cattle barn, as they called it, on a bus, spent the night, and got a physical, passed all that, come back, and this was during the late summer of 1967, and recruiter says, "Hey, you're good to go." And I said, "Okay, so what does that mean? When am I good to go?" And he said, "Probably next February." And to him and to myself, I said, "Nah, that's not going to work. I am not going to be hanging around here waiting to go off in the military during Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc., etc. I'm ready to go." So my brother, who was 9 years my senior at the time, his best friend, who ran a restaurant in Birmingham, it was a 5-star Italian restaurant.
Wow.
And he said, "I want you to talk to Frank. He was in the Coast Guard." And I said, "Yeah, what's the Coast Guard?" So I talked to Frank. Frank says, "You got to get in the Coast Guard, man." He said, "It's great." He said, "It's a small service." He said, "Everybody knows everybody, but they don't have all the chicken shit rules that the other military services have. They let your hair grow longer. And by the way," he said, "of all the services, they have the best food." And he had been in the reserves. So, and he said, "If you can," he said, "get into aviation." He said, "That part of the Coast Guard's even better." And I said, "Okay." So the Air Force recruiter, by happenstance, called me on the phone one day, and I did have a job. I was delivering auto parts. That was my last job locally, and so he called me at work, and he said, "Look," he said, "the Coast Guard recruiter has looked at your package, and he wants to have a talk with you." I said, "Okay." So I went down and I talked to the Coast Guard recruiter, and he said, "Well, you got to take the tests again." And I said, "Excuse me, I just passed all the tests." And he said, "Yeah, you got to take the tests, the written tests, and I think it was even that many years ago, it was ASVAB, and you got to take that again for us, and then you have to take the physical again. I said, man, you know, I just went to Montgomery, Alabama, and spent the night, and saw guys having knife fights, and got fully inspected externally and internally. And I said, I'm not up for that again. He said, well, sorry, we got to do it. So I passed all the written stuff, and he said, all right, here's a card, and this is where you go next week for your appointment for your physical. And I said, okay. So I went to the location downtown, and I go in, and it's a medical building, and it's like a doctor. It's not a guy checking 50 guys in a line bent over with their skivvies on the ground. All right. It's one doctor. I go up, they got elevator music. They got nice look magazines on the coffee table. There's nice music in the lobby of the doctor's office. You know, I'm there 10 minutes and calls me back. I get a one-on-one physical with a real doctor. And they said, okay, you're good to go. And so, like I say, by this time it's around, I don't know, 1st September. And recruiter calls me up and he said, okay, you're good to go. And so I'm fearing the same story I'm hearing from the Air Force is sometime next year we'll get you in. And the Coast Guard recruiter says, we're going to enlist you on October 30th. And I don't think I said the words "oorah" back then, but that's certainly what I was thinking. I was ready to go. So,
heck yeah,
away I went. They my first jet plane ride, and off I went to boot camp at Training Center Alameda, which, as you're aware, they shut down around 75 or 76. But
so I wasn't sure when they shut it down, but I do remember the training center being Alameda. As a matter of fact, Matt Fithian just talked about going down to it. Well, I think it was Matt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then they moved it from there to Cape May, New Jersey, right?
Yeah. Well, Cape May was always in existence. They just shut down Training Center Alameda. But when I went in 1968. I later found out, I didn't know at the time, I was young and dumb, checked in and, got 12 weeks of abuse or however long it was, and found out that they had patterned it as close to the Marine Corps as they could. And then that was in 67 and 68, they had some pretty big congressional investigations because they had us doing things that they probably shouldn't do. But I just,
no.
I tried not to, there were guys that were really had trouble handling that, guys from, kids from all over the United States. And I just tried to keep a smile on my face, at least internally, not externally, and went with the flow and graduated. And I had asked during the week that they had, the 6th week, 7th week, or whatever it was, I had asked, or they interviewed us for what possible schools you would like when you graduated from boot camp. And I was trying to avoid going on a cutter. And I said, hey, I want aviation school. And they said, what do you want to be? And I said, hey, I want to be an AD. Well, we'd had a briefing about 3 weeks before that on what the different ratings are in aviation. So I'd picked AD. And
which was aviation
machinist mate.
Oh,
which is basically mechanic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
AD.
Yeah. So
those rates were gone by the time I came in, so I need a refresher every time I hear it.
Right. Yes. They made the combination when I was in headquarters, as a matter of fact, about 1994.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And as a senior ASM at the time, they were asking me, one of the officers used to give a briefing to the commandant and he would always conclude, and I was a backseater. I'd be in the back of the room listening to whoever they were giving the briefings to. And he would always end it with, on a humorous note, with, because they were trying to decide what the names of the different ratings were going to be when they combined them all. So, and they were bound and determined to change ASM. So they said, Master Chief Farmer wants it to be Aviation Survival Specialist.
ASS?
ASS.
Gonna be an ass?
Pause. Yeah. Which I didn't, but the guy made it up. He thought it was a funny joke. So anyway.
That's pretty funny.
I eventually
you got to give credit where credit is due. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So anyway, gosh. it came time for the interview on okay, what do you want to do when you leave boot camp? And I said I want to be an AD. And the guy said, "What does an AD go? And what does an AD do?" And I said, "I can't remember." Okay, next recruit, you know. And so I was pretty high up within the boot camp hierarchy because turns out I was the assistant platoon leader. So there was some favoritism because of my performance during boot camp. So when I got to the end, you know, and they read the orders out and all that good stuff, and you know, they got to my name and they said, Seaman Recruit Farmer, you're going to the Coast Guard Cutter Gresham, which is coming back from Vietnam in about 2 weeks. It was a 311 cutter, you know. We got from the Navy in 1947. So the boat was already wore out when we got it. Anyway, so I said, "Oh, thank you very much." So after all this was over, I went to the company commander and I said, "Hey, I thought I was getting a little help on the choice here." And he said, "Well, the location you asked for was close to home, which was Mobile, Alabama, and you said you wanted to be an AD, but you didn't know what an AD was. So I figured you need a little time on a cutter." And I said, "Thanks, boss. I appreciate it." You know.
Hoorah!
Yeah. So I end up, you know, standing with 8 or 9 other guys when the Coast Guard Cutter Gresham docked at Alameda in 1968. This was like January or February 1968. And they were the first ship back from Operation Market Time in Vietnam. And the first class bosun mate on the ship, he sized us all up. We're all standing there in our dress whites. And he said, "Farmer," he says, "you're the biggest one you got to watch tonight." And I said, "Oh, thanks." And so I spent all night on watch, putting drunks to bed that were coming back from their first liberty in the United States after being gone for, I don't know, like 9 months to a year.
Wow.
And then my goal after that was to get, welcome to the Coast Guard, was to get off of that cutter.
Oh my goodness.
So that's where I started. And I had
how long were you on the ship?
I was on the ship for about 1.5 years. Which leads me into the story of how I became an ASM, if you're ready for that one.
You know it.
Okay, so we're out on Ocean Station November. And at the time, the Coast Guard had ocean stations on the East Coast and on the West Coast, and these were for aircrafts that were either transiting the Atlantic or transiting the Pacific. Because in 1957, they did have an actual ditching of a commercial airliner, and everyone was saved by the Coast Guard cutter that was on site. So back in those days, that's what they had, ocean stations. And they also had one between Hawaii and Japan, which was Ocean Station Victor. Out of California, the cutters that were stationed on the West Coast rotated on Ocean Station November. And occasionally they would do an Ocean Station Victor, which is they would go to Ocean Station November, halfway between San Francisco and Hawaii, and they would sit there for 30 days, and then they would go into Hawaii and replenish, spend about a week or two there, and then they would go to Ocean Station Victor, halfway to Japan, sit there for 30 days, into Japan and replenish, back to Victor, back to Hawaii, back to Ocean Station November, and back to California.
Wow.
So, yeah. So we're on Ocean Station November. And they had a rule back in those days that if the ship's radar was down more than 72 hours, you had to be relieved on station by another cutter. That was, it was kind of like the backup ready crew as we know it today.
Okay.
And that was an ugly feather for a CO's cap to have to be relieved on station. So they would do anything they could to get, once the radar went hard down, to get it fixed so the CO didn't have to be relieved. So back then, contrary to what my father told me on the tarmac before I got on the jet plane to go to boot camp, he said, never volunteer for anything. Back then, I was kind of contrary with my dad. So when I got in the Coast Guard, I volunteered for everything because I felt like it expanded my horizons. So I volunteered when I got on the cutter as part of the boat crew. So I was the guy in the front of the boat, in the bow, who hooked up the I can't even pull up the name of the pulleys and whatnot to get you up and down out of the water when you're on the cutter, and they put the boat over the side of the ship.
Yeah, the davits.
There you go.
I know my boat terms.
Excuse me.
Come on, Master Chief.
Good. Hey, I'm proud. See, it's so long ago for me, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
So anyway,
you've spent so much time in aviation. I get it.
I know. I shed a lot of those surface memories. Anyway. So anyway, we were at. They said, all right, they're going to deliver parts from San Francisco with a C-130. So you guys, at X time or whatever it was during the day and the afternoon. And so I said, okay, good. And so we're out there, we're sitting there, and here comes the C-130. And they come in about 50 feet and they drop out of smoke so they can drop the can with a parachute on it. We can pick up the parts, and then the world is good, right? We get the boat fixed and get the radar fixed. So here they come, and I thought this was pretty impressive. C-130 comes in over about 50 feet, and you can see the guys' faces on the back of the ramp. And so there's another seaman in the boat with me, and he says, hey, Farmer, see the guy on the back of that ramp? I said, yeah. He said, that's an ASM. I said, what the hell's an ASM? He said, it's a new rating they just came out with. It combines aviation ordnance and parachute rigger, and that's what they do, is they fly around and drop out life support equipment. I said, yeah, that's cool. And he said, the important thing is, they'll be back in San Francisco in about 6 hours drinking beer. And we got another 2 weeks out here. Because back in those days, the only alcohol you had on a Coast Guard ship or a Coast Guard cutter was Scope mouthwash. That was it. Yeah. So I said, okay, where do I apply? And he said, there's a message on the rec deck down on the bulletin board. And I went and put in for the school, and I got accepted and he didn't. And I still to this day, I can't remember that kid's name. But anyway, I got my orders. By the time I got my orders, I'd worked myself up to being almost a striker for bosun mate. And I was actually the lone seaman working in the bosun locker on the ship. And needless to say, the bosun mate chief, who I'd probably spoken to directly 3 times in the year and a half that I was on the ship, he was quite disappointed that I decided to be a wing maggot, as they called them back then, and some other names that I won't repeat on here. And so I got my orders. We were loading stores to go on what they called a double Victor, which was the one that I explained, where we left San Francisco, went to Ocean Station, November, Hawaii, and then Victor, Japan, back to Victor, and then back. And it was a 3-month. It was going to be a 3-month cruise, and I had already had a Bering Sea patrol, and I had been on that boat underway for 3 months, and I was not excited about going to Japan. I was taking orders from family members on what kind of neat stuff that I was going to buy for everybody, and when we got to Japan. But I got my orders and went to ASMA school, which at the time was, as some of your other interviewees have said, was there was 12 weeks at Lakehurst, New Jersey, which was parachute rigger school. Another 6 weeks at Aviation Ordnance School in Jacksonville, Florida. And then ended up with orders to Air Station San Diego.
Nice. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Switlik. No mission is the same. Why should your suit be? Introducing a new custom dry suit experience. Choose your fabric, colors, neck and wrist seals, zippers, pockets, collars, and so much more. Intelligent measuring prompts ensure the most tailored fit. Brought to you by Switlik Survival Products. For more information, visit us at www.switlik.com.
And that's where it begins.
That was it in a nutshell. I will tell you, if I can, a little story. When we were underway in Alaska, I did 30 years in the Coast Guard, and I had, in my aviation career, I had hard landings. I had experienced the results of get home itis, with almost crashed in California trying to get back in Mexico trying to get back from a SAR case that we'd been on for 3 or 4 days. I had a near midair off of Camp Pendleton in a training flight in an H-3. But the most prolonged fright that I experienced in my Coast Guard career was when I was on that boat and we were in the Bering Sea on the fishery patrol, and we had the weather decks were secured for 7 days, and we knew the water temperature was running 34 to 36 degrees consistently. We were taking we had 50-foot seas, and we were taking 57-degree rolls, and we all knew at 18 years old the survival equipment they had back then was a Kapok life preserver, and that was it. There was no.
Holy
they had rafts that occasionally got ripped off the side of the boat, but no survival suits. So we knew that if that boat rolled over, we were all instantly dead. You know, we had about 3 minutes to live in that frigid water, because you know, it would, even if the weather was conducive, a C-130 couldn't get to where we were, you know, in less than 6 hours. So that was the most prolonged fright that I had. Like I say, the weather decks were secured for 7 days, and we were just
50-foot waves.
Yeah, we were just making. We were maintaining our position and heading, and that was about it. So that was what really.
Going. Are you like following the waves so it's not quite so bad, or what?
Oh no! You got to be headed into the waves, so that the waves are breaking directly over the bow, and you have to keep the bow into the waves. So the worst thing that you want to happen is get sideways. to a wave of
Holy
that size, and you know it can roll you right over. If you've ever watched Deadliest Catch, you know
Yes.
they demonstrate that all the time about how bad it is to get broadsided by a rogue wave. And even a 311 foot cutter is subject to that kind of wave action. But we didn't roll over, and we survived. And
Dang, Larry. Holy shit.
learned a lot on that trip.
Did you get seasick? Just my own
Nope.
curiosity. Oh, good for you.
I tell you, you know what? I never had a problem with seasickness. We were
great.
doing rescue swimmer implementation in Los Angeles one time, and the boat that we were working with, I think it was a 44 footer, got diverted right in the middle of our implementation training with a helicopter, and they both got diverted to go on a search. And we had maybe 3-4 foot chop. And everybody on that boat, including the coxswain, was sick, except for me, you know. And I'm just standing up there going, man, you guys are funny, man. This is what you do for a living, and you got to do it while you're throwing up, you know. I don't understand. Of course, they had a newfound respect for the old aviation master chief, you know. So anyway,
Did you offer to take the wheel? You want me to drive us in? I can totally see you do that.
No,
You want me to drive us in?
yeah.
All right, so I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I am loving this. All right, so you get to San Diego. That's your first unit,
Right.
as an ASM?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And back in those days, obviously there was no swimmer program. So as an ASM, what you did was you became a flight mechanic. May not even have called it flight mechanic then. It was hoist operator in the H3 was what they had at San Diego at the time. So I got qualified probably in the fall of 1969. Qualified as a flight mech, and man, stood every night duty that I could. I think we were on 1 and 4 at the time. Took extra duty. Volunteered for weird cases. You know, we did a lot of work in Mexico, all the way down to Hermosillo, all the way down to La Paz.
Really?
So yeah, so we had a lot of interesting cases.
Well,
And,
I have to ask because it's one of my favorite things. Do you remember your very first search and rescue case as an ASM?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
All right.
And I'll just be and there's not much to it. It was
It doesn't matter.
I
love it.
It was a guy who had drowned right off the a Mexican national who had drowned right off the Tijuana coast, and we got the call on it. SAR alarm went off, and we went out and spotted the guy from the air. Did a platform pickup. He was in the obviously dead category, but you still got to do what you got to do. And so it was only, I didn't have to suck and blow very long, and I was taking turns with the avionicsman, which we had back in those days. So there was, we had 2 pilots, and there were 2 in the back, avionicsman in the H3 and also the flight mech. So we took turns for about 5 minutes, because all we did was, when we got him inside, we lifted up and landed right there on the hillside in Tijuana and turned him over to the Mexican police. And it was disconcerting, because what they did was, when they took over, they stopped any kind of resuscitation, and they threw this guy in the back of a taxi cab, in the back seat of a taxi cab, and covered him up with a blanket. And in broken English said, "Thank you very much, Coast Guard. We got it." So
okay.
That was my first case.
Oh my gosh.
But I had one a little later. I had one.
Well, wait, before we go too far, one of the things I want to talk about real quick is you mentioned the platform pickup, and Matt Fithian had just talked about that. He had a similar platform pickup, and for those that don't understand or don't know, is that the old H3 you could land on the water and then water taxi up, and then what I'd like you to do, because I was not in the H3 and I was not in the 52, so I never had a chance to do that. So would you just kind of walk us through a little bit of like, how does that work? Like, step out. I know you drop the door, latch it.
Yeah. There's actually a platform that was stored in the overhead of the tail pylon in the back of the helicopter. And as I recall, it had a dual latch mechanism where it bolted into the floor. You hooked a cable on either side to door receptacles or knobs that were built into the sides of the door, and then lowered the platform down. You could lower it to, as I remember, you could lower it to 2 levels. You could put it so that it was actually tilted and in the water, tilted down, or you could just have it level or horizontal to the door, so it gave you about 6 or 8, 10 inches, or maybe a foot of clearance between the bottom of the platform and the actual water, if it was flat calm. So we would land, and there was a platform checklist, just like you have a checklist for a hoist, and it says, we all talk about it in the aircraft. We're going to do a platform pickup, and then pilot says, get ready for the platform pickup, and he's there. He's sitting there in a hover waiting for you to get the platform rigged, et cetera, et cetera. And then, you would. It was pretty easy and simple. You'd say ready for platform pickup. He'd say, okay, coming down out of the hover, or landing, or something to that effect. And
yeah,
depending on the state of the water, if it was fairly calm, they would land, and they would have the survivor, or whatever you're picking up, would be outside the rotor wash disc on the water.
Yeah.
It would be at the 1 to 2 o'clock position, and then they would taxi in, just like you were doing a hoist over a boat. The same principle, same maneuvering of the aircraft, except it's on the water, working like a boat.
Right on.
And then, so they would maneuver over, and you would pick up the object, or pick up the survivor, pull them onto the platform, and then the first thing you would say, as soon as you felt that you were secure, or you were getting the person in the aircraft, you would say clear for a hover, and they would lift up in the hover to a safe altitude, 10 or 15 feet, and that was pretty much a platform pickup. Now, if the seas are running to the point where you were at risk of getting a tail rudder in the water, which was a bad thing, they could do and they had a name for it, and I can't recall it, but it's a platform pickup where you spend minimum time on the water, and you find the pilot in. Actually, the survivor or the person is not outside the rotor wash. You con him in right over top of this person, and then you con him down, just like you were doing a hoist. And so the objective is to spend minimum time on the water, and you coordinate it so that when you step out on the platform, you got a gunner's belt, a restraining harness,
to
keep you from falling in, and you get out on a platform, and you con him down, and as soon as he touches down, you grab whatever, pull it up onto the platform, and say clear for a hover, and he pops back up in the air. And it works pretty well, or it used to.
Pretty cool.
Not anymore.
Yeah. Well, now they can't land the aircrafts in the water. That's not a good thing.
like we always say, you can do a platform pickup with an 865 or an 860 one time.
One time. Because once that sucker hits the water, it's
just
not
once.
coming back out.
Yeah.
Just once.
Yep. Just once.
Some people like to call that a ditching. Just gotta throw that out there.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Nice. Wow. First rescue. Dead guy. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then I had one a little later that sold me on a career. You know, it was a SAR alarm with a child, about a 10-year-old kid, got away from her mother in the surf, and we got there just in time to actually. We did a platform pickup, and this child was rolling over in the surf. Reached in and grabbed her, brought her back up, and as soon as I grabbed her and she got air, she started coughing and spitting, and basically became conscious. And I had an opportunity to land on the beach, and after 60, 50 something years, it's still emotional to me this day, is returning this child to her mother. And I remember thinking, after that, I mean, I never saw the child again, never saw the mother. It was just one of those things that happened during the job, to be able to give that child back. And
I just got chills.
I remember thinking on the way back. Okay, it was a short flight back to the base. I remember thinking, damn, I think I'll do this for as long as they'll let me. And, because it overrode all the, some of the negative stuff that I experienced in the beginning, and especially all the crap that I experienced on the boat.
Yeah.
You have these moments during your life or during your situation that completely changed the trajectory of your life, and that was the one that did it for me. And I made up my mind then, and that was probably 1970, 71, somewhere back then. I said, I'm gonna do this as long as they will let me. And
that is so cool.
Yep. Yeah, so that's what I did. And spent
30 years, 30 years in the Coast Guard because of that day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And even 30 years later, they made me get out. They changed the rules. They went to high year tenure in 94 because my goal was to be, because it used to be that as an E9, you could stay in the Coast Guard. They were the last remaining service to do it. You could stay until you were 61 years old. And so I used to tell people, I said, I'm going to be the first 61-year-old Master Chief jump out of a helicopter. That was my goal. And then I think it was 94. They came in high year tenure and they said, Farmer, you're done.
Son of a.
And so, I put in my letter, and then, between the time I put in my letter and by the time it actually came, I think I put in my letter in 96 and then retired officially on November 1st of 97. I used to have admirals come to my office all the time. Hey, why don't you do this special job? Hey, why don't you, put in for Master Chief of the Coast Guard? And I said, nah, I'm done. You guys just changed my opinion on a lot of things. So, I'm done. I'm done. But I went out with a smile on my face. I have no regrets, and I have no animosity toward the Coast Guard. I mean, it was good for me.
That's good. That's great. Well, I'm gonna keep going if you don't mind. Are there any other rescues that stand out to you in San Diego? Because I have one here that I want to read, but if you have any other ones you want to touch on before I get to this one, I'm all in.
No, I had a lot that I think are too many to mention, but there weren't any. They weren't as significant or as interesting, I should say, or I can say, as the one in 1971 where we went and got a guy that was in pretty bad shape and visibility was terrible. But I had more than my share. But None quite like
All right.
that one.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're good with it, I'll get right into it right now because this rescue earned you an air medal. And
Go ahead.
all right, this is how this one reads. Here we go. Citation to accompany the award of the Air Medal to Larry Edward Farmer, Aviation Survivalman, 3rd Class, United States Coast Guard. Petty Officer Farmer is cited for meritorious achievement in aerial flight on the night of 12 February 1971 as air crewman on Coast Guard helicopter H3 1473. Engaged in a night medical evacuation of a severely ill crew member from a 492-foot freighter Steel Executive located approximately 220 miles south of San Diego, California. Despite the hazardous flight above thick overcast, the helicopter arrived at the estimated position of the vessel. After smoke floats were dropped for orientation, a difficult instrumental approach was made and a successful hover was established at 50 feet above the water, nearly 5 miles from the vessel. The helicopter was then air taxied toward the Steel Executive. Although the visibility was less than the length of the vessel, Petty Officer Farmer persevered in his communication and search duties. Upon arrival to the ship, he expertly directed the helicopter into position over the visible portion of the vessel and successfully completed a difficult hoist of the patient. A demanding instrument takeoff was then executed and the helicopter returned to San Diego to deliver the patient to medical authorities. Petty Officer Farmer, through his expert communication advisories throughout the mission, contributed significantly to saving of a life. His perseverance, initiative, skill, sound judgment, and unwavering devotion to duty are keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Damn, Larry. 220 miles off San Diego. Wow. That's a long way. I don't remember how long the H3 can fly, but I know that's a long way out and a long way back.
Yeah, it was about 6 hours. It was the capability of the H3, the best I can remember. Of course, we left San Diego with a full fuel load, which meant I don't know how many people are listening are familiar with San Diego. San Diego is the air station located on the most prime property in San Diego County, but it's right down there on the Embarcadero. So all it has is a helicopter ramp. However, they have a means to cross the street to get to the runway at Lindbergh Field. So when we would go with a max fuel load for max distance or capability, we would taxi across the street and then do a running takeoff with the H3, so it was easier to get airborne rather than pull right out of a hover, which the helicopter wasn't capable of doing. So yes, it was interesting because when we got on scene, we had established radio contact with the vessel, and then when we got on scene, and I'll forget it, I'll remember it as long as I live. We circled over top of the vessel, and we couldn't see anything. All we could see was that it looked like a layer of cotton on the ocean, sitting on top of the ocean, and that's what the weather looked like. And all above us, where we were, and above us, and the visibility was completely unlimited. But where we had to go was we had to do a precision approach to a coupled hover, as they call it, a patch, down through that stuff, and then air taxi over to the ship without the obvious objective was to medevac the guy, but get to the ship first and not run into it.
Yeah.
So there was a few there was more than a few puckering moments, and the pilots were magnificent in that they kept relieving each other during our air taxi. Once we did the approach to the vessel, probably a a mile or so downwind. And then when we got within, we could see the boat, and they started taxiing, and they could see us on their radar, and they could hear us, but and we could see them on our radar up until about an eighth of a mile, and then we were in the blind. So the avionicsman and I were the avionicsman was working, helping the co-pilot with the radios, and he was doing most of the communication because the pilots were having such it was so intense on hovering the helicopter and doing the air taxi. The pilots were changing off on the controls. They were relieving each other on the controls so that one could rest and one would fly. But so we're in the air taxi. We're leaning out the door trying to visually see the vessel before we had an inadvertent collision. So fortunately, we found the vessel, and we were able to do the hoist and get the guy back to San Diego.
Now, when you guys did the hoist, just sending the basket down, or did you guys send each other down to go get them?
No,
with a tanker like that?
We didn't send anybody down. We sent the litter down and told them that, back in those days, we asked the crew of the vessel, strap him in the best way that you can, and they got him strapped in, and we did a litter hoist, and we did it with trail line, both ways. We put the litter down, they disconnect the litter, and then we moved back off to the side, still keeping the boat visually.
Yeah.
And they were able to package the guy, and then we hoisted him up to the helicopter, and we had a hospital corpsman on board from the base, and so he was able to care for the patient on the way back to San Diego, and
awesome.
that one had a happy ending.
Oh my gosh!
But it was there were some pucker factors during that one.
Dang. Yeah, it's kind of funny to think about right now, is like sending a litter down to a vessel and say, hey, strap this guy in, and then hook the hook up when we send it back down, without having some guy that knows what they're doing. Like, oh, yeah, I think this is good. This is good. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, looks good to me.
Oh my gosh!
I can remember doing that. You're looking down at a 50-foot, 60-foot, sometimes 70-foot hover, and you have sent the basket down, or you sent a litter down, and you're looking as best you can to see that things are okay, and the cable's not wrapped around the device or whatever, and most of the time it worked, but sometimes a lot of times we had problems, but we managed to get the job done back in those years.
Back in the day. Oh my gosh. Man, good for you. The entire crew. Wow. That's
yes.
So you're flying and I can see it now. You flying out, it's like clear blue 22 up at altitude. But there's a layer down on that water, and you're flying into it, and there you see nothing. Like nothing. Yeah.
The layer was about, as I recall, I don't know, it was around 1,200 feet thick,
Wow.
and it was just the fog bank that was laying on the water, and the ship was in it. And
jeez, man, coming down at 50 feet off the water too.
Yeah, so that's another one that's in my photographic memory, was when I told the pilots to stop. I said hold. I said I got the vessel, and it's like from where we were like, I don't know, 70, 75 feet above the water, and then what I could see was basically looking up, and we were way below the main deck of the damn ship. So I think we ended up doing the hoist at around 125 feet. That's how big the boat was.
Wow.
But
oh my gosh.
it was wild and exciting.
Oh. Dang, Larry. That's one heck of a case. Good job for you and the entire crew. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is awesome. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Blue Drop Training and Simulation. Blue Drop Training and Simulation for equipping your team with essential training solutions, including highly interactive courseware and advanced VR MR simulation training tools. Explore more of Blue Drop's training solutions at bluedropts.com.
Yeah, and I got to say this, you know, it's always the crew. I don't think there are few things that we ever did in the Coast Guard or we do now that is not a crew effort. I mean, you know, the rescue swimmer gets deployed by themselves and goes out and usually does some heroic stuff, but it's a crew that gets them there and it's a crew that gets them back.
I 100% agree with that. This is not an individual sport. This is a team sport all day long, and I've been blessed in my career where I am allowed to. I'm a hoist operator as well as a rescue swimmer, and you know, like you guys, the old guard, that was like standard ops. You're a hoist operator and you're a swimmer. Like the newer guys, I don't think anybody can do it now. I don't want to speak out of because I've been out for too long, but when I was in, I was not allowed to be a hoist operator. It just wasn't, not that I don't want to use the word not allowed. It was not, we had too much going on in the shop to be a swimmer.
Yep.
And standing duty. They didn't, too many qualifications to hold on that it was frowned upon to be able to try to get more and hold more qualifications. And I get it. Now, being a hoist operator, again, coming back to that crew mentality, nobody does this alone. I can't do it without a rescueman. I can't do it without my pilots. And I can't do it without a hoist operator. Like Right. Yeah, I'm all about it. Team sport. Bring it in. 1, 2, 3, go team.
Definitely.
Right on. All right, Larry. I'll keep going. Where do you want to go next?
Anyway, so I was able to go to make first class by the time I left San Diego. I showed up as a third class in 1969, and I left there in 1974, and I was the first class. And then at the time, I felt like I was getting stale because I studied a lot for the service wides, and then I realized that I had some potential because, hey, I got an air medal under my belt, so I got, and I don't even remember what it is now, but however many points that I got for for getting an air medal, which gave me an advantage on the service wide, and I said, well, I got to take advantage of this, but I'm getting stale. I can't sit here in San Diego for the rest of my career and do nothing but H3s. I got to get somewhere where I don't have experience, which included at the time C-130s. So I started bugging people to get a transfer, and they said, "Oh, we've got a perfect place for you. You can go to it's now called ALC, Aviation Logistics Center. At the time, it was Aircraft Repair and Supply Center. You can go have the sole ASM job at ARSC." Oh, okay. Lots of search and rescue, huh? Nope. If you get lucky, they might let you fly on an aircraft that's freshly out of overhaul because they got to hover test it and see if it's still going to fly after they've had it torn apart for 6 months. And I said, oh, joy. Okay, on to the next part of my career. So checked into ARSC in, I think it was May or June 1974, and went to work for a wonderful civilian by the name of Herman Freeman who ran the upholstery shop, and that's where I was attached. And at the time, they had one ASM at ARNSC, and so I learned how to sew upholstery and work on aircraft that were on the overhaul line at ARNSC.
Dang. Well,
so we did maintain a certain amount of survival equipment for the aircraft, because they would have to do a water portion of the mechanical test flights. So the crew wore survival vests, and we had life rafts that we put on the helicopter just in case. So I maintained that amount of life support equipment and sewed a lot of upholstery for inside of helicopters.
Very nice. Very nice. Did you put like pinstripes in it from time to time? Because I would have.
Yeah, I know. No. No.
Just because I probably,
I got in trouble one time. This is a funny story. I got in trouble one time because whenever, and I can't remember the exacting details, but it used to be like if you would order a part for a helicopter, my responsibility also was as a helicopter progressed on the overhaul line, my responsibility for a given helicopter was to make sure the survival equipment was installed correctly and had the appropriate tests. For instance, they would, when the aircraft came in for overhaul, they would remove all the seat belts, shoulder harnesses, the inertia reels, and fire bottles and all that good stuff, and that stuff would all be stored in the life support shop where I worked. So when the aircraft, when they got to a certain point on the overhaul line, my responsibility was to put that equipment back in and make sure it was okay. Well, I had an inertia reel, which when I say inertia reel, that's the part on the back of the seat that has a cable that goes to the restraining harness, and it allows you the mobility on a harness to move backwards and forwards to it until it automatically locks or until you physically lock it. Well, I had an inertia reel that was bad, and they said, well, order one out of supply. Okay, so I was always very meticulous about making sure our equipment was top-notch and that we had the best and it got fixed promptly. So I ordered it. Back then they had a system where when you ordered things, you ordered it priority 3, which you never did unless the aircraft was down because of that part and could not fly. That's the only time you ever went priority 3 for a part. But it was normally like priority 6 or priority 8 or something like that means. We'll get it to you in a week or two. Okay. Yeah. Take your time. The aircraft is not down because of that part, but we're going to need it soon in the future. So I wanted the part now, and I knew the aircraft was progressing down the overhaul line, and so I went priority 3 for an inertia reel, and when it had it came in like 4 or 5 days. The only problem is it had a big tag on it. It had come out of Da Nang, Vietnam.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, out of the Air Force parts bins in Vietnam. So the engineering officer and I had a nice conversation about stealing parts from the real warriors.
That's hilarious. Could it have been you standing at attention at his desk? I'm gonna throw that one out there too.
Yeah. There was a little bit of that involved.
There might have been an elevated voice on his end. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I'm gonna make a good assumption here.
Yep.
Oh my
Make
goodness.
sure that you understand the protocol for ordering parts there for me.
Out of Da Nang, coming from Vietnam. That's hilarious. Oh goodness. Well, I want to touch on something else. In 1984, seeing that you brought that year up, you actually had an incident while you were at Air and the Sea. And I'd like to touch on this one.
74.
74. What did I say?
Right. I know. Your young brain won't let you say 74. I understand.
No,
that.
I guess not. No kidding. So
yeah.
in 1974, you actually earned yourself an award. But what's interesting is like you went to this spot coming out of search and rescue, and then while you were there was an incident that happened, and you took lead and did a whole bunch of stuff and saved a guy specifically out of it. But let me read this, and then I'm excited to hear what really happened. So, and as one more note, this is not a medal that I get to read very often because I don't see them very often. So, hats off to you for earning this as well. So, here we go. Citation to accompany the award of the Coast Guard Medal to Larry E. Farmer, Aviation Survivalman, First Class, United States Coast Guard. Petty Officer Farmer is cited for heroism on 31 July 1974 while serving as the Survival Equipment Specialist aboard the Aircraft Repair and Supply Center, Elizabeth City, North Carolina, when he assisted in a rescue of survivors and in a firefighting operation following a crash of a Navy aircraft into a building inhabited by 23 employees. Petty Farmer was working in the upholstery shop on an aircraft overhaul problem when the Navy aircraft sustained a mechanical malfunction during takeoff and suddenly crashed into the side of the building, throwing the occupants to the floor. An explosion occurred, and a raging fire immediately engulfed the building, creating havoc in the almost totally demolished shop. Despite the hazardous threat of the disastrous jet fuel fire and numerous chemical explosions, Petty Officer Farmer heroically began searching through the dense smoke and wreckage for the one man who was reported missing. Following a second explosion, and with a complete disregard for the great personal danger of being trapped in the Holocaust, Petty Officer Farmer courageously struggled through the dense smoke and fire and miraculously located the missing man, seriously injured and unable to move. He remained at the victim's side until help arrived to assist in evacuating him to safety. Although suffering from smoke inhalation and exhaustion, Petty Officer Farmer unhesitantly returned to the blazing scene to search for other survivors, and when advised that all personnel from his shop were safe, quickly directed his efforts to fighting the fire. He remained in the center of activity until the Holocaust was finally contained. Petty Officer Farmer's remarkable initiative, exceptional fortitude, and daring, in spite of imminent personal danger throughout this rescue mission, reflect the highest credit upon himself and the United States Coast Guard. Damn, Larry. What happened? Oh my gosh.
Wrong day, wrong place, wrong time.
Oh. Okay. I'm sorry.
It's it's difficult for me to talk about it because it's still, after all these years, it was such a traumatic event. But anyway, it happened. Civilian that worked in our shop, there were two civilians that were perished in the other side across a wall. The shop had a center wall in between the upholstery shop and the fiberglass shop. We were located right on the end of the runway adjacent to, we were the closest structure on the runway at Elizabeth City. The footprint of the building is still there. They park firefighting equipment now on the old footprint of the shop where we had it. So I was in the back of the shop working on a life vest, excuse me, for the helicopter, and I heard a strange noise out front. We had glass windows, and you could see, and right out, you could see the runway. And right in front of our shop was a volleyball court that we had. Anyway, I looked up and planes they did touch and goes all the time. And so I looked up and I saw this E2 was sort of waffling or wobbling partially or in the air, probably about 500 feet, or not 500 feet, probably about 150, 250 feet in the air. And then the noise from the engine stopped, and all I got was a mind photo shot of the aircraft right outside front of the building, and the props had stopped turning. And next thing I know, I was waking up on the floor, and there was obviously a very loud noise, and I was unconscious for maybe 4 or 5, 6 seconds. So then woke up and realized that, hey, I'm still alive. So everybody in the building did what we did best. We tried to help the people that were injured, and we had one guy one civilian that didn't make it in our shop, and I'd been talking to him like 20 minutes before the plane hit about what we were going to have for lunch that day, and he was sitting at his sewing machine and basically was hit by the wing as it swept in through the building, and hit him in the chest, and he had no chance of survival. So it was almost instantaneous for him and for the other two individuals also. And then from that point, we went into rescue mode and firefighting mode, and that was pretty much it.
Wow, Larry. I have never heard that story. Like, I didn't even know that happened there.
Yeah.
Like, all the times in East City, like being there, and heck, I was there for, let's see, 4, 8, almost a year. No one ever talked about that.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that was a long time ago. I guess, for for about a year, they stopped all the other services from doing touch and goes on that runway. And then slowly, things went back to normal. So it's always interesting when I visit the base, and airplanes are doing touch and goes. So, but
yeah,
they couldn't relocate both hangars because they're right there. They're within. There's no guidelines existing in 2024 that will allow you to have any building that close to the center line of the runway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is what it is, and we move on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, nice job. I mean, you're out of operational duty, and yet when something happens, you're jumping right in. Like you said, it's what we do, and you did it well. Nice job, sir.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. The RealResQStore.com. Your shop for all your podcast-worthy gear. From comfortable shirts to cozy mugs, we've got everything to showcase your love for your favorite podcast. So what are you waiting for? Head to the RealResQStore.com and let your gear do the talking. All right, my friend. Well, let's bring you out of ARNSC, and let's bring you into your next operational area. Because now, let's see. Well, we're still in 1974, Larry. Holy smoke.
Yeah. Well,
we have a long way to go. I'm so excited.
I know. I got lucky in 77. I made chief petty officer. So that's like within a 10-year time frame. And I'm like, I don't know, 20, 24, 25 years old. They used to call me the teenage chief. And
that's really good. It took me like 10 years to make like first class. So nice job. Yeah. That's really fast.
So I was lucky. And I've always said, it's a moon and stars thing, right place to right time. And I did pretty well on service-wide exams. But so they said, we're gonna send you up to the air station and let you run the shop. And I said, okay. So I did that. I did that for a couple of years at Air Station Elizabeth City. So at this point, I'm a chief. So the flying is curtailed a lot. I still I maintain a qualification, but it's
Yeah.
I'm not standing duty like the other guys. So from there, I went to Air Station Clearwater around 78, 79. And by this time, I'm 88. So now I'm a senior chief. I'm at Clearwater. And so the people that were the engineering staff down there decided that, you're a real go-getter and you have these moments of being really sharp. So we're going to let you run maintenance control. So basically I found myself running maintenance control and doing all the aircraft assignments for back during the Mariel boat lift, and so we had C-130s coming in from all over the Coast Guard, and that was an interesting time. And
why were they all coming to Clearwater?
Well, because that was we were the staged command for the Mariel boat lift that was going on out of Key West when all the Cubans were coming to the United States.
Oh yeah.
That was the last big migrant influx that we had in the United States before the one that we're having now.
Oh wow! So you guys were the U.S. Coast Guard was bringing C-130s down there for support to go south.
Oh yeah, yep.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. AKA dropping lots of survival life rafts and.
Oh yeah, yep. Life rafts, various survival equipment. It was, it was quite an operation.
Wow. Okay.
So that was, and then around 82, they said, "Hey, man, you're doing really well. You're going to make E9. Okay, good. What's next? We're going to send you to the Institute in Oklahoma City." All right. And I know there's going to be some
water at all.
No water. And there's going to be coasties listening to this go, "What the hell is he talking about? Institute, Oklahoma City." Once upon a time, and I think they dissolved that command in, I want to say 80. It's around 87, 86 or 87.
Okay.
But what that used to be, the Coast Guard Institute, we got free space, office space, at the FAA Center in Oklahoma City, out at the airport, the Oklahoma City Airport, and the FAA has a big testing facility there, and they also they do a lot of other things. They have like I say, testing. They have a sled tester and various other devices. It's like a big headquarters with labs for the FAA. Well, the Coast Guard had a floor of in what they call a multi-purpose building. We had 48 E8s and E9s who were subject matter experts. Well, the Coast Guard thought it'd be a good idea to have all the correspondence courses and the service-wide exams in a centrally located place in the United States for saving money on mailing, okay? The correspondence courses, et cetera, et cetera. So, hey, we got all this free space from the FAA, so let's go to Oklahoma City. Oh, boy. All right. So at the time, back in the 80s, it was one of the highest rates in the Coast Guard of senior enlisted people, kicking their dogs and beating their wives and children. It was bad. The coasties could not psychologically cope with being in Oklahoma City. So I wrote several white papers to headquarters about moving it, that what they should do is take the subject matter experts and put them at their respective A schools, wherever that may be, for all the ratings, and let them do that work out of the because at some point everything's going digital anyway. But to give you an example of how quickly the Coast Guard was progressing, my whole 2 years at the Coast Guard Institute, I wrote service-wide exams and correspondence courses on a manual typewriter.
What?
Manual typewriters. It's what the five of us. There was 5 ratings, so 5 ratings. So we had 5 E9s in the office, and we all had on our desk. We had a manual typewriter. And the warrant officer and the lieutenant commander who ran that office, who were aviation types also, they had electric typewriters, but we had manual. So to be fair, right before I left in 83, we got one computer in the office to share, and that was 1983.
Oh my goodness! Did you have like a little bit of whiteout there? So like, a typo, and you gotta roll up, white it up, bring it back down.
Yeah, that's it. Whiteout, man. I got to be very proficient at whiteout.
So, and if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I've used a manual typewriter. But if you make the wrong button, you got to roll it up, and you got to remember how many clicks you do. Click, click, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wet it out, blow on it, let it dry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you're in line.
You know what? While we're talking about whiteout, I just remembered something. I need to white out something. I missed a very big part of my career, and back when I was going from the Elizabeth City, I left a part out. When I was in Clearwater, I made E8, and this is where I made a mistake. And they sent me back to Elizabeth City as to run the ASM school.
Oh, nice.
And that was in 1980. So
okay.
I'm sorry. I was there for about a year and a half and made 9, and they said, well, we only got one place to send you. So it was off to the Institute in Oklahoma City. So anyway, 1983 comes along, and we're seeing all this stuff that's going down with the Marine Electric off the Virginia Capes, Coast Guard using a Navy rescue swimmer, blah, blah, blah. All this history's taking place. Next thing you know, Commandant's testifying before Congress, and he said, well, our search and rescue protocols never call for putting somebody in the water, putting one of our crew members in the water to assist survivors or victims. And Congress basically said, well, you are now. Figure it out. Here's a chunk of change, and go to it. And so the next thing I know, I get a phone call in Oklahoma City and said, would you be interested in leading this program from an enlisted perspective? And I said, I sure would. And they said, well, the good news is we want you to go stand up the rescue swimmer stand team. And the bad news is it's in Elizabeth City. And I said, hey, that's fine. My daughter was born in Elizabeth City. I said, I know my way up and down Highway 17 blindfolded.
Yep.
Throw me in that briar patch. And so in 84, I started prepping myself for rescue swimmer school, because there was no doubt that I was going to have to go to the Navy school, which is what they settled on. We had a big meeting in early 1985 with the first 5, because they had already graduated, and we all went to Pensacola. We had Navy rescue swimmers there. That was where the Navy swimmer school was. and we had a Canadian SARTEC come in. We had Navy SEALs to talk to, Air Force PJs. We had them there, so it was, Coast Guard put our minds to this, and the bottom line was we decided that we were gonna adopt what we could from the Navy.
Okay.
And pursue their method of rescue, and so the next step was carting my dead ass off to Navy Rescue Swimmer School.
Now,
that's where it really got fun.
Yeah. But to recap it real quick, is that you guys in the first 5 have already made it through. Steve Ober, number 1, Kelly Gordon, number 2, Rick Wolford, number 3, Matt Fithian, number 4, and then Butch Flythe, number 5. So those guys had already made it through. Now those guys, and the reason this is important is because those guys were second classes at the time, or something, third and second classes.
Yes. Yeah.
So
third and seconds.
Yeah. So they're young bucks. Now, third and second, they're 20-ish, maybe 22 at oldest. Like still young bucks. Like you had been in for a hot minute. You're now Master Chief. Like, and now you have to go through the school. Did you have to go through the school, or did you want to go through the school?
You know what? I didn't have to go through the school, but I wanted to go through the school because I knew the success of the program hinged on what qualifications and credibility I had going forward. And I knew that there was no way that I could lead a team of guys that had been through that program and me not experience myself. So I got together with the several officers in headquarters who were running the program at the time, and basically the officer that was tasked with the first rescue swimmer program manager was a guy by the name of Ken Coughlin. And I sat down with all these guys, and I said, here's the deal. I said, I'm gonna go down and go through the Navy Rescue Swimmer School. And I said, I may or may not make it. If I don't make it, you guys drag somebody else in. But to have the credibility that we're about to undertake, I've got to not only experience the training, but I got to graduate from the training. So, and that was close, and I got funny stuff about that too, because I started working out. I found out what the minimums were in around September of '84, and so I'm still in Oklahoma City, so I'm talking back and forth with the first 5, and then that they've got their they've got 2 sides of their brain working. One is, this guy's going to be my boss, so we need to clue him in as best we can. And then the other side of their brain that's working is, this guy's a Master Chief. Let's watch him go through some crap that he's not going to know about. So they told me a lot of stuff in preparation for school, but they didn't tell me everything, right? So anyway, so we worked it out where I would go down there in April of 1985. So it was kind of a big deal, because at the time in 1985 I was the oldest and most senior student that they had at Navy Rescue Swimmer School. They had put through a few Navy Chief Petty Officers, but they had not put an E9 through training. So they really didn't know how to react. And so it's like, the first day, they're screaming at all these kids. We started out with, 30 some kids in our class. We end up graduating, 10 or 12. And they'd scream at these young kids, hey, you scumbags, lean and rest. Master Chief, would you mind doing some push-ups? So and that was the same old thing. And we did that for a couple of 3 hours, and I'm going, this is not working. So I mustered the schoolhouse, and I called a meeting with the lieutenant commander that ran the school, and at the time they had a Navy senior chief who was enlisted charge of the school, and all of my Navy class members. And I said, hey, you guys don't understand. I said, the whole future of the Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer Program hinges on the fact that I do everything that these kids are doing and then some, and then I graduate from this training. Now, if I flunk out of the training, then that's on me. If I can't physically meet the requirements, that's on me. Coast Guard will send somebody else down here, and we'll keep going. But you guys cannot treat me with kid gloves. Everybody understand? Yes, Master Chief. I said, okay.
Yes, Master Chief.
Well, yeah. And so we took a lunch break, right?
Yeah.
And man, I come back after lunch and, went back into training, I don't know. I can't remember if we were running or what we were doing, or we started pool work or whatever. But, you never seen a happier bunch of guys, E6 and below, that were instructors that found out that they had a Master Chief that they could misuse and abuse, and nobody was going to say anything. I think they all took out their whole career's frustrations on me for the rest of the 4 weeks that I was there. It was intense, and I think the toughest thing that I had. I can't spit out all the requirements, but they're not much different. The minimums, they're not much different than what they are now. But the big one for me was the 800 meter buddy tow, where they took someone of like body size, and you had to tow them. I think it was when you had to tow them 800 meters within 40 minutes.
I think so. 40, 41, 42, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Somewhere in there. And I made it by 30 seconds. Because they had to, their retest rule was, back in those days, was if you failed the objective, the first time, they give you 30 minutes to drink a soda, and get your breath, and then you would retest. Well, I knew going into that 800 meter buddy tow that if I had to do that again, there's no way I was going to do it. So, I made it.
That's the recovery time of the 20-year-old.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not the recovery time of a E9 at the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, that was the only luxury I had during that whole process is when I was at the Institute as an E9, I had the ability to go, I would run in the morning, and then I would go to the pool that we had a contract with. They had racquetball courts and all that. That's where everybody at the Institute went for the physical exercise, but they had an indoor pool. I'd swim a mile, and then when I got home at night, I'd run like 4 miles and do calisthenics. Wow. Well, I did that the whole time I was in preparation until I got to the point where I could meet the minimums. But it still wasn't enough when I got to Pensacola. But I was able to meet all the requirements.
That's what I'm talking about.
And it is the hardest, most intense training that I had in 30 years in the Coast Guard.
Thank you for not quitting. Thank you for going. Thank you for being the godfather of the rescue swimmer rate for the United States Coast Guard. Wow. I think I'm highly impressed at the fact that you said you would go. I really am, because you didn't have to. Like that's and there were a lot of people. You know what? I want to be careful how I phrase this, but there were rumors and there were stories told to me as a young swimmer that there were guys that there was a decision made at one point, and maybe you can highlight some of this now and clarify it for me. But you had a choice. You could either go through swimmer school or you needed to change your rate. I mean, that was that's an accurate statement.
Yes, it is. And I think they call that the famous letter of 1990, I think, or around 89.
Okay.
The Coast Guard sent letters to everyone that was still in the ASM rating that had not gone to swimmer school, and said you got by, I can't remember all the dates, but like July 1st of 1990 to either 1, graduate swimmer school, 2, pick another rating, or 3, get out and leave the service. Yeah. And it was pretty hardcore, and there were several members who challenged that via their Congress people, and it was upheld. And the Coast Guard's approach on that was upheld, and a few people got out, and then a few people got off their butt and got in shape and went to swimmer school. And there was less than a handful that changed rates and continued their career in the Coast Guard. I think the other one was make Chief Petty Officer. If you made Chief Petty Officer, you didn't have to.
Got it. Okay. Well, I appreciate you clearing that for me. School. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, to fall back for you as an E9, a Master Chief, you didn't have to go do that, but you did, which also, when that letter and all that stuff came out, like nobody could come to you and say, I don't want to do this because I'm this or because of that. And you're like, just looking to be like, I did it. Get your butt in shape. Let's go.
Yeah, no. Yeah. But they still did, I got a lot of phone calls, from some of those people, you shitting me, Master Chief? We really got to do this? I said, hey, yeah,
I did it.
Yeah. Things are changing, and if at 36 years old, and I don't think any of those people affected were as old as I was, I said, you got to put your head down and do it. If you want to remain in the rating, and there's no shame, for you to change ratings, but we're changing the structure of the ASM rating, and it's,
this is the way it's going. Yeah.
It's got to change, and this is the way it's going.
Dang. That's incredible. I'm again, hats off to you. Well done. Yep. So that's cool.
So we were fortunate. We were able to start the ball rolling in 1985 at Elizabeth City.
Yeah.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Yes, it is. Number 500 right here. Thank you very much. I appreciate you getting that ball rolling. Or as I like to call it, the freight train. You guys got the freight train going. It was never going to stop. Game on.
It was. It was a freight train.
Oh, my gosh. I don't know the answer to this, so this is another question I've got. Did you ever stand like operational duty as a rescue swimmer?
No.
Was that one of your choices as well, or I don't know?
Yeah, there was no reason. We were never in a situation that there was a need for me to stand operational duty.
Right.
Right away when we started the stand team, I had Rick Wolford for initially.
Yep.
And the first 5 was at Elizabeth City, so they were standing the duty for Elizabeth City, but there was, it just it was never an opportunity for me to do that. And I chose not to step on the young guys. Even when we got to Mobile, we moved the stand team to Mobile in '88. and I had Jeff Tunks, Jim Sherman, Jerry Hoover, Scott Dyer. We had a full shop of stand team guys. We were busy doing the implementations, and even then, I never chose to interject myself into any kind of duty rotation.
Cool. Yeah. You didn't have to. I mean, like those guys were running.
So, yeah.
They had it.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yep.
what's up? Was going in motion. There wasn't anything stopping it. Like, let it ride. And those guys took it and literally ran with it. It was awesome. Like, so, I mean, heck, I'm pretty excited because I get to be part of the group.
Yeah.
So, I like I said, now that you're running this and you know what it takes to get through school because you endured the suffering that we all do. I'm so excited about that. That's just amazing. Rescue swimmer number 6. You're now down at stand team. You have to standardize the entire U.S. Coast Guard and this entire program. So I would love to hear from you, like, because again, you're the first person that the higher ups are calling to either A, get an explanation, or B, expect a fix. So what is the pushback that you got? I mean, we all know as from the stories of everybody like, oh, they wouldn't allow this, they wouldn't allow that. But you were the first voice to get all that. And the first voice to push it up, be like, this is what we need. And so what was that like for you in your position?
Well, it was we had huge resistance in the beginning because one, we were changing the paradigm of Coast Guard aviation rescue protocol for almost 100 years. Well, actually 80. Let's say 40. Okay, 60 years. Then aviation had existed.
60, 40,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, less than less than 100. About 60 because it's been 40, and the 100th was just a few years ago. Anyway, hey, we have never had to put a Coast Guard person in the water to save somebody, so why should we start doing this now? And then the biggest resistance we got once we got people used to doing that was, they went from Butch described it very well, and I think Rick Wolford did also during their podcast, was that we went from a point of we're never going to do this to a point of we can't do this without a swimmer. That took some time. It took about 10 years to get there, but that was the span of the development. And in the beginning, and then we were especially had problems with when we went to do it with we went to implement with the H-65 was, to start off with, they had no power in the 65, so you couldn't load up with a fuel and go do rescue swimmer training ops. Usually the stand team guys, we'd have to go out on the boat, recover with a boat, and it was a real fiasco. And I've got engineers yelling at me about, this is great. We got this brand new helicopter, and you guys are introducing 50 gallons of water on the floor and around the avionics every time we go flying. We can't fly this helicopter, which, they're going to turn into rust buckets. This is not going to work. Well, fortunately it did, but actually the 65 eventually became, in the 90s, became the most reliable aircraft that we had, even more reliable than the C-130 and H-3, So,
wow,
that worked out great. But and there were times when, like when they hung me and Matt Fithian or me and Steve Hathaway on a hoist of a 65, and the helicopter would be bent over to the right, trying to lift a weight. It'd be leaning to the right, So fortunately,
oh gosh,
we got through all of it.
Oh gosh.
So we're doing implementation at Air Station Savannah, 1989, and I've got Scott Dyer is with me, and like I say, we were doing the implementation, so we're out with a 65, and by this time we've got Aviation Training Center Mobile pilots, standardization pilots who are going on the implementation with us, and also a standardization flight mix. So by this time we're doing a pretty professional job. So we get out there and we're on the night training flight, and we'd already done the daytime qualifications for this specific crew that we were training. And the Mobile pilot, one of the best 65 pilots I ever flew with, by the name of Jim McEwen, was in the left seat, and Savannah pilot was in the right seat because he was under instruction for the swimmer ops. And so it's nighttime, and we had enough fuel, and our weight situation was okay, where I think I went out on the aircraft and Dyer went out on the boat. Either way, they were getting ready to lower me into the water, and I had, we had briefed the crew, the flight mech, on what we were going to do, and that, we weren't going to do anything stupid or silly, and that it was all straightforward. And remember, it's training; we need to be safe. So my habit was to, when I got out on the hook, they were going to lower me to the water so I could be a rescuee, and then the next evolution, their swimmer is going to come rescue me and rescue Scott Dyer. So I go out on the hook, and my habit was to, when I got out on the hook, especially at night, was to daytime too, was to check the outside of the aircraft and just make sure everything's okay. So I get out on the hook, and I look up, and there's a big black hole right above the hoist of the 65, which is where the engine cover normally is, but there's no engine cover. Okay. So I look back, and the engine cover is hung up on the damn tail right in front of the fenestron. Okay. So I'm thinking, okay, we need to land the helicopter, right? And I need to let the pilots know what's going on. So as the flight mech at this point, he's starting to lower me down to the water. And so I'm going, stop, timeout, hold it. I'm giving him crossed hands. I'm giving him everything I can. And so finally I start grabbing his leg. Well, he's thinking this is part of the training exercise, right? That I'm messing with him for some reason. So I finally get his attention, and I get him to hoist me back up to the level of the door. And I said, bring me back inside and let me on the radio. You got a problem. And so I got back inside the helicopter, and I put on a headset, and I said that your engine cover on the right side is back on the fenestron. And they said, okay. And so the Mobile pilot took control of the aircraft. He put the helicopter in a hover and a crab, and of course, he didn't necessarily declare Mayday, but he did, he put out the right call to let them know that we had a loose engine cover, and he was going to try to air taxi back to the air station. And so he did, and he was successful. And he landed that helicopter with the engine cover still on the top of the tail in front of the fenestron.
Oh my gosh.
The funny part about this is the flight mechanic. He was very expressive, because we immediately had a debrief, in a private room with the engineering officer and the ops officer, and I think the CO came in, because this is a big deal. Mobile pilot has to air taxi the helicopter back, without losing the engine cover, and so we're all telling our side of the story of what happened. And I'm walking in a ramp before we even had the pre-brief, and the engineering officer came up to me and he said, Master Chief, I always thought you was a pretty smart guy. And I said, what do you mean, Lieutenant? And he said, because it doesn't make any sense to me. Why didn't you go down on the hook in the water, disconnect from the hook, and then call them up on the radio and say, hey, you guys are shedding parts. Good luck. And I said, sir, I said, I always check my aircraft, and I always take care of my crew. I said, there was no way that I was going to leave and let them handle that problem by themselves. And here's the funny part. So we're in the room and we're in the debrief. And so it's the flight mech's turn, and they ask him what he thought happened. And he goes, and this guy, he was one of these good old boys, and he was from Savannah, Georgia, I think, because he'd been at the air station for like 6 or 7 years. And he says, I didn't know what was going on. You ever tried to throw a cat in a swimming pool? He said, Master Chief wouldn't let go of me. I didn't know what was happening. It's like trying to throw a cat in a swimming pool. End of story. So everything worked out all right. Everybody was happy, but that's my interesting story about implementation.
That's hilarious. I love it. Thanks for sharing. That's good. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Breeze Eastern. For over 80 years, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured battle-proven aerial rescue hoists, winches, and cargo hooks. Each product is carefully crafted to support demanding mission scenarios, ensuring the job gets done safely and efficiently. Visit them today at www.breeze-eastern.com.
We had our first big swimmer reunion in 2010 in Elizabeth City. And I remember it was like the evening that we kicked off the festivities, and I was up at the podium with Butch and Steve Ober and Rick and a couple other guys. And one of the swimmers in the audience said, Master Chief, we've never seen you smile like this. And I said, there's a good reason for that, because for about 10 years, I would go to sleep every night, thinking, please don't let this be the night, because my biggest fear was in the early stages, it was having a swimmer get hurt or severely injured, or God forbid, we lose one during a rescue. And that is my most proudest accomplishment. I'm looking for wood. That, in 39 years, we've lost swimmers, God bless them, participating as air crew. But we haven't lost one in process of a rescue swimmer type rescue.
Yeah.
So that speaks very, very highly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That speaks very highly of the training that was developed by the Coast Guard, the Navy, back in '88 when they accidentally killed a student in their pool, and they changed a lot of their training mode over the years. I've had during different types of events and visits to Pensacola, I've had Navy people in high places talk to me about, you guys never stopped instructor on student. And I said, that's correct. And they said, well, we did, and we're still not doing instructor on student, and we're paying the price, Yeah. A couple times a year, or every couple of years, we have swimmers quit in the middle of rescues. So it's our success is a tribute to, I think, to our training and maintaining our long developed protocols and requirements that produces a quality product.
Absolutely. It's when you say it like that too. There are currently, I think it's 1,042. I think is the number that we're at
Close.
right now. Yeah. That's what I'm going to say at the moment. I don't think my number is exactly accurate, but it's close. And, to think about that there has not been one rescue swimmer that has been lost on a case or in the water, or, I mean, we've been injured. Guys have been hurt. Guys have been put in precarious spots that have been tweaked here and there. But to really think about that and all the lives that have been saved between the beginning and now, it's mind blowing. It does come back to the training and
it's
the dedication.
utterly amazing.
Yeah. I like thinking about it now, being in your shoes and setting the program up, and to be going to sleep every night thinking about, man, there are guys on duty right now. Like, is everything we did we do everything right to protect these guys? And did we give them enough to be able to be on their own and be okay?
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
What a mind job.
Yep. Yeah. I'll tell you a quick one. 86. This was, we're in the full throes of the beginning. And we had a budget on the swimmer stand team to prototype equipment and whatnot. So we were looking at all the latest technology that we had available. So we started looking at dry suits because we were about to go implement Kodiak, and we started thinking, man, who wants to get in the damn Bering Sea in a damn wetsuit, That makes no sense to us. So we hooked up with several companies, and so I called headquarters, sent them an email or whatever, and I said, hey, I need a bunch of money for or a certain amount of money to prototype dry suits. And the answer I got back was, no, you don't need dry suits. And I said, you want to explain that to me one more time? And they said, well, the latest worldwide water survival charts show that with a properly fitted wetsuit and 7mm whatnot will give you approximately 6 hours of survivability in 34-degree water. And so I said, all right, let me call you back. So I thought about that for a while, talked to my guys, I talked to the first 5, whoever I had available. So I'm not going to mention any names, but I called headquarters back and I said, all right, here's the deal. I said, I am not going to be responsible for putting a rescue swimmer in the Bering Sea alone in a damn wetsuit. And if something happens to the helicopter, or if that swimmer has to be left behind, that the nearest rescue is 6 to 8 hours away. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I said, if you guys want to be responsible to do that, I'm done. Hire somebody else. And I got to hold on. And about 20 minutes later, I got a call back and I said, how much money do you need? So, I mean, we solved that problem. And the other swimmers will tell you that we had some less than superior dry suits that we tested. We went through a series of we tested a number of them, but we finally settled on one that has worked for a really long time. We settled on it, I think, in 87 or 88, and we're still using it to this day.
Yeah.
So and they're constantly upgraded. So that's the other part of it is my successors have stayed on top of procuring the latest and greatest equipment. So that's worked out well.
Well, you know what else is really nice to see, and this is especially now, is we have so much that has been collected over the years, all the rescues that everybody's done, and the actual job that we are required to do. It's not even like this, hey, this is an option. Oh, you could do this. No. These are guys who are like, hey, we're going to go do this. And don't get me wrong, like before I say required, the air crew, they'll have a conversation about it. But I mean, I just talked to the guys from the Barlavento off Humboldt Bay, 20-foot waves. It was a beautiful day in Humboldt, and they get offshore, and it's 20-foot waves in a sailboat. And he's doing everything he can to get to the sailboat. And that's stuff that happens all the time. And the fact that these guys, they have all the backing from everybody now. You guys fought for us, and now we have everything we need and then some to get what we need to continue to do the job, because it's so effective. It's amazing.
Sure, it is.
Yeah.
And what's nice now is because of the success of the program, the higher ups or leadership within Coast Guard aviation, they understand. They've seen it enough now, and they have piloted enough cases to understand what the requirements and what the needs of the individuals are. And I would venture to say everybody in Coast Guard aviation now wants to make the swimmer's job more capable and safe.
Yeah. And it's not just going into the water either. And this is something else that, I mean, we talk about, hey, I'm a swimmer. We're going to go save people out of the water. Man, half the cases that we have, you're getting hoisted down to a boat or some other tanker or I was hoisted to the side of a mountain to go get some guy that was having elevated heart rate and difficulty breathing. That wasn't in swimmer school. Like at no point, it wasn't until all of a sudden you're there and you're like, oh, by the way, you're going to have to go do this because you're the guy that's got to go down on the ground. It morphed into something that was, I think, much bigger than what was planned in or thought of right from the get-go. And it is proven to be just incredible. And I'll throw one more thing out there too, is that I can't speak for a bunch of the other services because I've never been through their programs or whatnot, but I can say that I've had enough people that I know that have come to me to say that they either have been or want to go through the Advanced Rescue Swimmer or the Advanced Aircrew Training School in Cape Disappointment, because the training is incredible. That's pararescues, that's Navy SEALs, that's Canadian SARTECs, and other agencies around the world want to go to that training because it is so incredible. The other thing that I find so unique and just blows my mind is when I have people call me and contact me and say, yeah, we have the U.S. Coast Guard's Rescue Swimmer Manual. We're trying to use that to build our program and make it better. That is amazing.
Yes. Yep. We've come a long way.
Hell yeah.
And it's you always know the success of a program when you're respected by the other services, and not just here but worldwide.
Fact. Absolutely. Larry, good job, man. Way to take the lead. I still love the fact you went through A school. It's such a warm and fuzzy for me. Oh man. Larry, we've been on for a long time. I want to touch on just a couple more things before I let you go. But the first one is you had the opportunity in about 1996 to deploy out of a helicopter with your son after he became a rescue swimmer. And I just want to hear it from you. Like, I know, proud dad moment right there, but like, that's pretty cool. There's only, let's see, you, Watson's. I don't know of anybody else. I can't think of anybody, father-son combo that's had that opportunity. Maybe you do, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
I can't either. There may have been a third pair, but we can probably discuss it at DCERT. I mean, there's just some things I can't remember. I can remember Jimmy because back in the day, the ones that were at headquarters were on flight orders. So rather than going and sitting and boring holes in the sky in the C-130 somewhere, I would go TDY down to Mobile and take swimmer flights, go on swimmer training flights, and occasionally just collect flight time. But this was 1996, as I recall, where they came in and they said, "You guys in headquarters, we're not spending that kind of money anymore. We're going to take," and this included the pilots too, that were at headquarters. We're going to take you guys off of flight orders. You won't be getting flight pay anymore. Thanks for your 6 years in headquarters, but guess what? No more flight pay for you. So I said, all right. So we need to have a last hurrah. So I go down to Mobile to get my last bit of flight time, and I got together with Jimmy and I got together with a crew. So we're going to go on. Jimmy and I are going to go on a swimmer training flight, and this is going to be my last swimmer flight, probably in my career. So I want to make it right. And so they said, well, what do you want to do? And so I told the pilot, and I told the flight mech, I said, I don't want you guys to say anything, but Jimmy and I are going to break all the rules. We're going to do a simultaneous deployment.
Oh my God, awesome.
Yeah. So we did, Jimmy and I worked it out so that, we knew, because flight mech's busy tapping, 6 times instead of 3.
Yeah.
And so, I told Jimmy, and I can't remember now whether he followed my lead or I followed his lead, but we made it so that we both got out together, and neither one of us fell on our face. We had reasonably good free fall deployments, and that's the end of that story. And I've said this at every event that I've ever attended since 1996. Somewhere, somebody has a video of that simultaneous deployment, because they had the graphics guy at ATC Mobile was on a boat filming that.
Okay.
And can't find it.
It could be out there. It could be out there. Somebody might have it.
It could be out there.
We might have it. We might need to find it somewhere.
Need to find it.
For the record, Larry, you being in charge of all this stuff, I guess you're the guy that can break the rule once in a while. I mean, if you wrote the rule, why not break the rule?
Well, that's what I figured. 96. That's what I told some people in Mobile. They said, "Oh, I can't believe you did that." And I said, "Hey, I'm retiring next year. What are they gonna do? Take me off flight pay and make me retire?" So.
Oh gosh, I love it, man.
Sometimes you got to throw a little fun in 30 years.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I won't tell you that I did. I used to do front flips out of the aircraft either. I will not tell you that.
Thanks to that's why I love Facebook, because all those years the guys were doing things, and then I was the last one to know.
Of course.
Okay.
Can't be the first to know. We all get in trouble.
So I only found out a few years ago that it was a favorite thing for you guys to do front flips and back flips and all this other stuff.
Yep.
Spin around on a hoist hook.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
Oh gosh, that's so fun.
And I never got a Christmas card either when I was in the headquarters.
Not one of them? Oh, what? Nobody sent you a Christmas card?
Back in the 90s, you guys were all swapping Christmas cards, and I didn't know what was going on until I had a 3-star admiral walk up to my desk one day and said, "Master Chief, we got to do something about these risque Christmas cards that your swimmers are swapping from air station to air station."
Oh God, I love it.
"Can you do something, or would you like for me to do something?" And I said, "I got it, Admiral." And that was when
So for
that
those
was
that
when
don't
the
know what we're talking
nasty email started.
Yeah. So I'm going to paint a picture for everybody that doesn't understand or have any clues to what you're talking about. So back in the day, and this is actually when I was in as well, and we weren't allowed to go too far. We had rules when I got to be a swimmer, but all the air stations would take a picture, a Christmas card picture, and then send it to all the other air stations. So it was a great way to find out who was where, and like, oh man, I didn't know he transferred to there and whatnot. And oh, my buddy's over here. And all of a sudden now they're at strip clubs and they're at Hooters and they're at this place. And they've got, I remember one specifically where all the swimmers were in wetsuits on the stripper stage and all the strippers are putting dollars in all the wetsuits. And that's just to name one. There are a lot of them out there that are really good.
Yes.
Oh, man.
And I found out the hard way. And that's when I learned they were doing things, unbeknownst to me, because they knew, and all I was trying to do was, I wasn't trying to be a hard guy or, without humor or anything. Unbeknownst to them, I was trying to protect them from the swimmer program being canceled, because there were times in the late 80s and the early 90s that with a stroke of a pen it could have been over, and we certainly didn't need some embarrassing event or risque Christmas cards or something that would get outside the Coast Guard, if you know what I mean. That would give it the kiss of death, because there were admirals who had the attitude of I would love nothing better than cancel you guys right now. And that was back in the late 80s and early 90s. So it was a struggle from a leadership perspective, especially from mine being the senior, because at the time during those years I was not only leading the swimmer program, I was the senior ASM in the whole rating. Out of 350 of us, I was a senior guy. So, and while I was at headquarters, I was the senior enlisted person in the whole damn building in headquarters.
Wow.
They would try to make me career enlisted advisor and all this other stuff. I said, man, I ain't got time for this stuff. I got 300 swimmers out there that are sending these damn stupid ass Christmas cards. I got to keep my thumb on these guys. So, see, that was my challenge, was in a leadership role was keeping these guys, I won't say restrained, but keeping them on a leash, or allowing them to function in an environment where they would still be innovative and come up with fresh ideas and be aggressive, but at the same time not crossing any lines of anything that's going to get us or get the program into trouble. So that was my goal, and fortunately it worked pretty well.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, I remember I remember being a young third class swimmer, and Bob Watson said it best. He's like, hey, like trying to rein me and another guy in that just got out of school. We're like chopping at the bit, let's go. And they're like, whoa, back it down. I had some great leaders in Kodiak when I first got up there. So, but it just, you saying all this is just reiterates everything that they were saying. Oh gosh, amazing. Let me touch on one more thing before I let you go. Well, it's going to be two more, but this one in particular. So I want to recognize you for a minute, because you did actually, with everything that you did for the U.S. Coast Guard and the swimmer program, you earned yourself a spot in the Hall of Honor in Mobile, Alabama. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's back on November 20th, 2008, and you were recognized. You and a chief aviation machinist mate, Oliver Berry. So you guys were recognized to be brought in, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. Actually, I'm not going to read any of it because it's like 15 pages long about everything you did in your entire career. It's amazing. But it just shows the leadership, the ownership, and the hard work and dedication that you had towards the program and to make it work. And in my mind, and from what I've seen, it's incredible. So what you started and what you fought for has gone so far. So
thank you.
awesome.
I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
I was just allowed to drive the boat every now and then, and there's a lot of people that had the most to do with that, including the rescue swimmer program managers I had, and the individuals that I had on the rescue swimmer stand team, and the rest of the swimmers that came after me, and when I punched out in '97. So it's like we discussed before, team effort.
It's awesome. All right, Larry, my last question. I like to ask this before I let everybody go, and that's, you had an amazing career, 30 years. You built a program from ground zero up and battled to make it happen. With all of your experience and everything you've got, if you had a piece of advice that you'd pass on to everybody in the rate right now, what would it be?
There's going to be dark days. Don't quit, because trust me and believe me, there is a very bright place on the other side. And I like to reflect on what Butch Flight says, and that is, being a rescue swimmer is a job. That's your job, but it's not who you are. And it's important to be who you are. So try to be who you are, and throughout your career, remember who you are, and remember you have a job. It's a very important job, but it still goes back to who you are. And if you're honest with yourself and you are who you are, you'll always see you'll come out on the brighter side.
It's a good piece of advice right there. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. My friend, thank you so much for your time. It's been a true honor to have you on. I'm so excited that we finally made all this connect and work. This is going to be great. I look forward to seeing you at DCERT in 2024. We're going down to Alabama.
See you at the Gulf. The
Gulf.
The people down there, no, they don't call it the Gulf. They call it the Gulf. We're going to the Gulf. Yeah, Gulf Shores. Look forward to seeing you.
Absolutely. It's going to be a good time. And we get to sit down, and we're going to end up telling more stories while we're there. That's like a guarantee. And I'm looking forward to that one,
I hope so. I hope so. We can tell a few that we couldn't talk about here.
Okay. I'm okay with that too. Very much so.
All right.
As a matter of fact,
okay.
It might be, according to Kelly Gordon, it might be with an old fashioned in hand. I was like, oh, okay, we can make that happen.
Okay.
Talked into. I like it.
All right.
Larry, you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time. I'll see you soon, brother.
Thank you for having me, Jason. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Anytime. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.
Go.
Now, it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share, or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, Those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode.
Switlik. No mission is the same. Why should your suit be? Introducing a new custom dry suit experience. Choose your fabric, colors, neck and wrist seals, zippers, pockets, collars, and so much more. Intelligent measuring prompts ensure the most tailored fit. Brought to you by Switlik Survival Products. For more information, visit us at www.switlik.com. Breeze Eastern. For over 80 years, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured battle-proven aerial rescue hoists, winches, and cargo hooks. Each product is carefully crafted to support demanding mission scenarios, ensuring the job gets done safely and efficiently. Visit them today at www.breeze-eastern.com.
And
Blue Drop Training and Simulation. Blue Drop Training and Simulation for equipping your team with essential training solutions, including highly interactive courseware and advanced VR/MR simulation training tools. Explore more of Blue Drop's training solutions at bluedropts.com.
Larry, I got a quick question. There's a rumor that you were supposed to be in the movie The Guardian, but then Butch was in the movie The Guardian instead of you.
Well,
What
that's
happened?
true.
That's
That's
true?
true. Yeah, that's true to an extent. Here's a quick story on what happened. Around I don't know 2005, I get a phone call from the Hollywood liaison guy who was a commander. I can't remember his name, but Butch can tell you a more accurate story. Anyway, he said we're working on a production of a movie called The Guardian, and it stars Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher, and we were looking for we wanted to find out if you would be interested on being a technical consultant. He said, we have done some traveling around the Coast Guard, and every time we visit the production crew has, trying to get a handle on what rescue swimmers do. And every time we go to an air station, your name always comes up as being one of the starters of the program. So we'd be interested in having you serve as technical advisor. I said, sure. Well, I didn't know anything about that. So we hung up, and he said, I'll be in touch. And I called my mother-in-law, who is she's into acting, local plays and whatnot up in Massachusetts. And I said, how do I do this technical consulting thing? Because I know there may be some money involved. She said, yeah. She said, it pays very well. Let me put you in touch with somebody that I know. It's in the movie business. I'll tell you her place in the movie business. But her father was in the movie Summer Vacation with John Candy, and he was a judge. All right, and if you recall the movie, there was a sailboat race at the end, which John Candy ultimately won with a sailboat that he worked on with his family. So her father was one of the judges at the end of the sailboat race. So he was in some movies in Hollywood. So she said, I'll get back to you, and I'll find a guy that you need and get in touch with that can give you current day information. Well, I eventually learned that there was big time money involved in being a technical consultant to a movie that was made in Hollywood. Well, so did some other people. So did the Coast Guard liaison. Okay. So anyway, everybody concluded that Farmer was about to be a wealthy guy because he was going to be a technical consultant on this movie. So the next thing I know is I get a call from the Coast Guard liaison guy. Unbeknownst to me, he was working a back deal to try to prepare himself for retirement also. Okay, so And he had been at this job quite a few years because it's a sole Coast Guard liaison is a sole officer job in Hollywood. And what they learned was Butch Blythe was standing in the wings, ready to provide completely free Coast Guard assistance and use all the equipment we have in whichever air station you want, completely without charge. And oh, by the way, I've got about 6 or 8 coasties that are rescue swimmers that can be in the movie, including myself. And they found out that Butch could play a guitar and sing. And so they said, and actually a pretty good actor. So they got Butch and they got half of the rest of the cast, and the rest is history, as they say. And so throughout the production, occasionally, when they were making the movie, I would get a call from Butch and with in a very apologetic tone and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, but there's going to be a part in this movie where they jump out at night, which is a golden rule violation, right?" And he said, "You got to understand, Master Chief. They're doing this for editorial effect and for photographic effect." I said, "Hey, man," I said, "I don't care. You guys make your movie, make it interesting to the public, put us in a good light," which they eventually did. I thought it came out really well.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So that's a story of the Guardian. But I did get invited to the worldwide preview of the movie.
Oh, nice.
Nice. The night it aired, and of course everybody was there, and my wife and I sat right in the row in front of Ashton Kutcher, and at the time he was married to Demi Moore, and she's more beautiful in person than she was on the screen, so I was starstruck.
No.
And of course, I got to meet the cast. I got, at the after show, I got to meet, Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher and all them guys. So it was a great experience. But Farmer never got a check, and Butch is still getting royalties, to this day.
Man.
Because he produced the song, wrote the song that they play at the end, "Run Me in the Dirt."
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. So he's still getting checks for all that.
Yeah. You know what? You win some, you lose some, man, Larry.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right on. Well, thanks for letting us know the real story. The real story.
That's the real story for the Real ResQ.
Love it. Thanks, Larry. I'll see you soon.
Farmer sails into the sunset. Butch and company get checks for the rest of their life.
Well, how's it go? It's fair winds and following seas. That's the way we like it.
Yep, that's all I get. Butch got the same thing, except, hey, here's checks for the rest of your life.
Oh God, I love what we do. So fun. Hey, thanks for telling the story, man. I appreciate it.
Sure. Glad to.